Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, and you, my friend, are listening to Light Talk.
Hello, this is Brackley in Las Vegas, Nevada, and today we are discussing salaries, what is A.C.T, and collaboration, all on Light Talk.
And this is David, broadcasting from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. Well, this is episode 145, and one episode after the incredible Marc Brickman interview that we had last week, and that was pretty cool. We're going to talk about it in a second. But first of all, we want to welcome back Brackley to the show. Brackley Freyer.
Hey, thank you.
Yay, Brackley's back.
Brackley's back.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, I don't know. Stan's taking the day off, and I don't know, man. Stan, we love you, but it's good to have you back, Brackley.
And he always records in his underwear, which is very uncomfortable.
It's very unusual. That's why we don't do video. People think, well, why don't you guys do video? We don't want to look at each other. I mean, it's that simple. No one wants to look at me. We certainly don't want to look at Stan. Steve is the only really good-looking one out of this group.
That's
you know
true.
what we should do is we should get like 8 by 10 photographs and just line them up on the desk.
That's a good idea. And by the way, speaking of the desk, we are putting together a Light Talk house band, the Lumenoids. So we already have most of the band together. We're looking for a drummer. So if anyone has a drummer, or you are a drummer, you can join the Lumenoids. And hopefully we'll be playing live at LDI. But anyway, you know, Brackley's back, and it's great because Brackley, during his time off, listens to our show.
Time off.
Hey, Brackley, are you back at school yet?
Yep. Well, classes start Tuesday.
But you're not the department chair anymore, are you?
No. But I have to get ready for it and everything.
So you have all kinds of time off.
Oh, absolutely.
Brackley listened to our interview last week with Marc Brickman, and we would love to get a sort of a person who wasn't part of the interview's reaction to that interview. So, Brackley, what did you think of that interview?
Well, I thought it was good. I really liked what Marc had to say. A fellow Philadelphian, it was nice to hear, and he had a lot of good talking points that some of our young designers should take note of. Some things I just wrote down a number of things. Designing in the moment, I thought was really good. That's what we need to do. The really thing I liked is close your eyes and listen.
Yeah.
That was just really wonderful. And read the script and dream. And that's what we do as lighting designers. We need to dream. And less is more, as he states so many times during that interview, which I thought was good. Technology is great, but I love the fact that he said the engineers are in some computer lab in New Jersey and they never go to shows. But they design these wonderful things, but they never know really how to use them. So I think that was really informational for everyone. You know, how do we use tech? You know, we always think that we need to do all the bells and whistles, but we don't really need to. Sometimes one light is worth a 1,000 words, if you will. One of my favorite here in Las Vegas, there's the Cirque du Soleil show Car. One of my favorite moments in that show is when they have one light on stage and they're doing a finger puppet. And that's the only thing in this huge, humongous theater, and it really stands out as one of the precious moments. So I really enjoyed the interview. I thought he had a lot of good things to say, and mystery is good.
Yeah, mystery is good. He talks about the dark, you know, not being afraid of the dark and not being afraid of the light. And you're right, simple. And also, you know, honestly, about how many ideas he gets from mistakes. I love that story. He talks about when they were programming Pink Floyd in the Toronto airport, and they fired up the Vero lights on the screen, and they all went through their diagnostics, you know, their setup, and he said, "Oh my God, that's what I want."
I think it's great.
Yeah,
and I also liked where he says the storytelling. This is what we do as designers: tell stories. And he says theater is where it all starts, which I think is.
You know, I
true.
can't remember if it was Ken Billington or Jules Fisher. I think it's Jules Fisher, who once said, happy accidents save us all the time.
Yeah. That's right.
You know, all of a sudden an unfocused light turns on or something you never thought was going to work works.
Right.
These happy accidents.
Well, that's why whenever I light a show, you know, after I get everything focused, I sit at the desk, I go through all the channels just to see, you know, just as sort of like a channel check, but also to look at my palette, what I've done. And it only takes, I don't know, about 5 minutes to do that, depending on how many lights you have, of course. and if they're, if they're conventional or movers or whatever. And sometimes you see things that will inspire you. A mistake, a way a light's hitting a piece of scenery that you thought you had focused off that piece of scenery. It's like, wow, I could use that here. I could use that there. And I also like to have the director there when I do that. And it's because a lot of times you just don't know. It's sort of like serendipitous. So, yeah, it was great. Mark, what a gentleman. And what a nice person.
He seems like a very, very nice man.
My God, it's great. Yeah, I really am looking forward to continuing our relationship with him. So, anyway, thanks for listening, Brackley.
Yes, I listened to the show.
You should definitely tell your students to listen to that particular episode.
I did the other day, and I said, you've got to listen to this episode that was on last Saturday.
Do they know who Marc Brickman really is, though?
Probably not.
All right,
Although I told them I asked them if they've heard of Pink Floyd. They said yes. Well, he's the lighting designer.
Young students love Pink Floyd, and that's been going on for like 30 years now. Mm-hmm. And do you know who also loves Pink Floyd? Italian taxi drivers. That's all I hear when I'm in an Italian taxi is Pink Floyd. But that's a whole other story. Steve has our first listener question.
Yes, it's from Mark in South Dakota. And Mark wants to know, how much can I expect to make as a lighting designer?
Depends.
It depends.
I don't know. What's your part-time job?
Yeah. What else do you do? Do you teach at a university? I highly recommend that.
I hear Starbucks is looking.
Hey, don't knock Uber. Uber is actually a pretty good way of making money.
Yeah, I think if you're just starting out, if you're about to graduate as a student, I would say $500 to $3,000 a show starting out, and that next jump will probably be about $2,500 to $8,000 a show, and then the next big jump is going to be when you're getting royalties or in rock and roll a percentage of the concessions. So yeah, I mean there's a wide range of salaries you can expect. Over the course of your career. I think the thing you need to consider maybe is sit down again with that famous piece of paper and a pencil and figure out what it costs you to do a show. So, you're in a car, you have to drive a 40, 50-mile round trip every night to tech. It's costing you gas. Are you going to have a hamburger on the way there? Is dinner going to be in the car? That's costing you. I think you have to figure out what it costs to be in a small business. And then you put all that together, and that's one of the ways you start negotiating fees. Doesn't mean your client's going to pay you what you're asking for, but you do need to understand that that $500 show, you're not putting $500 in your pocket. You could be putting in $275 or $300, and $200 is going to just the cost of doing business.
Right. Well, one of the first things you can do is you can go onto the USA 829 website, and you'll see what the fees are for various types of lighting design. Either it's straight play or musicals, et cetera, et cetera. You can kind of get an idea, and then you have to multiply how many shows you can do in a year.
Let me put Brackley on the hot seat here for a second, because I kind of approach this a question assuming that you want to be a freelance lighting designer. And so my question to Brackley is, what do you think a house designer makes in Las Vegas? If you're the house designer for a good club or an entertainment venue.
I would think $1,000 a week would be about the average.
So all of a sudden now we've jumped up to $52,000 a year, and you can kind of semi-live. Then, of course, you still have to worry about insurance and retirement, all that stuff. But, you can move into architecture. Yeah, you can move into architecture also.
Mm-hmm. A lot of our students here are moving into the architecture world, and they're still doing freelance theater design on the side as well. So you just have to be able to be marketable and do lots of different kinds of design in order to make a living.
Yeah, and the cool thing about doing architecture, because my students pretty much follow the same pathway, is that it's a steady gig and you're still working in lighting. And I must tell you, it's good for you. It's really good to do architecture so that you expand your design thoughts into like more of a 3D world. Mm-hmm. You're sort of like creating environments for people to live in and work in and play in and whatever, instead of just, doing presentational shows. And that helps your theater work. So yeah, I highly recommend architecture, and we've talked about it in the show before, but if you're doing it, learn while you're in school, learn AutoCAD and learn Revit, because that will make you much more marketable. But my students can get architectural gigs right out of school.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean,
So do ours.
yeah, there's a huge call for that. So architecture is great. But yeah, if all else, but it doesn't work. Hey, there's nothing wrong with Uber either. I mean, I'm kind of kidding. I was kind of kidding, but no, there really isn't. You can name your own hours. You don't have to work it in and out. It's pretty good. One thing that Steve said that's very important, and that is insurance, right? And also medical and all that stuff. You really have to take care of yourself and figure out a way that you can be covered by this. One of the most important things that USA always talks about, United Scenic Artists, is to try to get hired not as an independent contractor, but as an employee. That way you are protected when you're working in the theater in case something should happen. You'll have workman's comp. And actually, there's a whole movement in the United States right now that are moving more toward employees. Now, here's the bad thing. The new Trump tax relief bill, or whatever the hell he wanted to call it, he has basically wiped out all deductions, all working employee deductions for employees. So you can't deduct travel, you can't deduct any of that stuff you normally can deduct as a independent contractor. So there's a lot of tax things you need to learn, or else it's going to bite you when you do your taxes every April.
The other thing that seems so far away, if you're a young designer, not only retirement seems so far away, but Social Security benefits. And if you're an employee, you have to work X amount of quarters over the lifetime of your until you're 69, I guess 68 to get Social Security. But every quarter you work, you can work 1 week and it counts as a quarter. But you do need to be an employee every now and then. Otherwise, you're not banking any money for Social Security.
No, if you're an independent contractor, you don't pay into Social Security at all.
You actually do pay. You pay more Social Security tax because right now, if you're an employee, you pay 7.5% Social Security tax or FICA, right? As an independent contractor, you pay 15%.
Oh, okay.
So you're paying both sides of it.
That's right.
You're paying your share plus the employer's share.
Exactly, because you're self-employed. Now, that pretty much cuts into your deductions, but at least, you are paying into Social Security. I don't know how that works, though, once you collect Social Security. You may be right, Steve. I don't know if you're still getting credit, but you are paying into it. I do know that for a fact.
I think that's one of the great failings of a lot of universities right now is not preparing their students to go into the business world.
Right.
Exactly. So that I'm almost suggesting we have an entertainment law course that we have our students take for that, and as well as we have sometimes a tax person come in and just talk to them about what's it like when they graduate and what to expect.
Right. So to answer your question, Mark, you can make anywhere from $500 to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. You may end up like Marc Brickman with a beautiful house in Malibu with lights given to you by Philips, which his neighbors complain about, by the way, if you listen to the show. Or you could end up just basically making a few $1,000s a show or less. As long as you're happy. The value of life does not depend on money, but it does make you happy. There's no doubt about it. It's funny. One of the first things I used to do when I have a new graduate class is I would break down my design fees. And I would actually do, a fee when it was like $20,000, a pretty healthy fee. But then I broke it down about exactly how many hours it took me to design that show, how many hours in research, how many hours in rehearsals, all that stuff. And it came out to something like, I don't know, $8.95 an hour, which is less than you make it in and out. And at in and out, you do get health insurance. So there you go. So Sarah in Portland writes, what does real collaboration look like? Well, I don't know what it looks like, but I do know what it feels like. And that is when you have a great team, it's like being in like this amazing synergetic experience where you're all creating together and you're getting inspired by each other. And that type of synergy can only happen when you have a group of artists together like that. And you're all open and you're not afraid to say anything. You're not afraid to vibe and to groove and to jam the idea. It's all about jamming. And once you get that group, there's nothing like it. It feels fantastic. And it's better than the money. I'll tell you that right now. So that's, to me, what real collaboration feels like.
Well, you're also talking about trust.
Right.
And you can only have collaboration. You can only have that jamming when there's real trust, because you're putting yourself out there and you know any criticism that comes back is not going to be destructive. It's going to be constructive criticism of your idea. So trust is at the heart of it. And if you lose that trust, I think the collaboration is over, because you'll always be a little guarded. What do you think, Brackley?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. It's the trust is inherent to what we do, and being able to, no matter whose idea it is, it's for the good of the play or good of the production, that everybody's on the same page and you're having fun doing it.
You know, I look at the 3 directors I work with now, and whenever someone says, this moment in this transition was amazing, the director or any of the designers, none of us would say, well, that was my idea.
Nope.
Never.
Nope.
That's not important, because
and the audience should not walk out of a show and say, gosh, the lighting was great, or gosh, the scenery was great. Hey, the production was good because everybody was collaborating.
That's right. It's got to all work together, which makes this art so challenging. Like Steve said, if you don't have that, you don't have that trust, and you don't know how to get into the vibe, you don't know how to jam with each other, then you're not going to have theater.
That's so true. Okay. Well, Jose in Colorado asks, what are some of the challenges the technical crew face in college plays? He's asking for a friend, of course. Well, I don't know. It depends on the college, I would imagine, because some colleges are connected to some professional theaters, and there are some less challenges with the crew on those kind of situations, I think, than some of the smaller schools that where the tech crew may be in charge of everything.
I think the challenges at those schools that have a partnership with a LORT theater, I think the challenges there are for that student to find a way to interact with perhaps that union crew that's working side by side with them, and to learn from them. So I think that's a challenge. I think it's a challenge also to prove to the crew that you have some ideas that are worth listening to. So I think it's just the challenges of kind of youth and experience in the same room at the same time. I think the other challenge that a tech crew has at a university level is the time they have to accomplish the task. You know, we start with a script and an acting company, and depending on the school, there could be a 3 or 4 or 5 week rehearsal period. And then they move into the theater, and it's tech night. And it's every man and every woman for herself. And we're not going to stop this rehearsal for anything. Take a note. So now you have, again, students who are there trying to learn their profession, and they're being asked to step up to the plate and swing away every night. So I think time. I think not giving them time to practice and learn what they have to do. Also, it's hard to make decisions if you're on a tech crew. All of a sudden, something happens backstage, and you kind of freeze. You're a deer in headlights. You're not sure what to do. Should you walk over and help? Should you walk away? It's hard. It is really hard.
Yeah, I think it's also being a team player.
It's a collaboration thing again.
Exactly, Brackley. It's like if you see something, that someone else doesn't see, you better go and tell that person. So I think it's really important that there are a lot of challenges, and a lot of it depends on whether you're in school. Obviously, if you're in the profession, things are a little different there. But we all want to help each other out.
And I think in the college realm, in some schools, there's that division between, they're the techies and then they're the actors.
Oh, I hate that word. We don't like that word. We do not say techies on this show. We should have told you that before you did the first show.
Could I start over then?
No, that's the way we're keeping all this in here. So go ahead, continue. We don't like that word, techie. But go ahead.
That's how we roll on Light Talk.
The technical crew and the actors are sometimes in 2 different realms, and sometimes they don't get along well together. Oh, they're the actors. Oh, they're the technicians. So I think that in some schools that happens, and that's all the collaboration. We all working on the same show together, whether you're on a technical crew, you're an actor, you're a stage manager, whatever the position, we all need to work together.
It also flips the other way too. it is. I've seen stage crews speak very poorly of actors on stage.
Absolutely.
They're too dumb to find their light. There's a lot going on in that actor's head, too.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's a two-way street.
Trying to remember your lines.
That's why it's important in college for all technicians to take one acting class so they could just know what they're going through. I think that is a good thing.
And vice versa.
Right? Well, they all do. All the actors take all the design and tech classes as well.
That's the old thing of community again. We keep on coming back to this.
Collaboration and community.
It's community. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm back to teaching again. I'm on this sort of like one semester on, one semester off thing. And today was my first day at school. We had this faculty meeting, and we were, self-assessing our department. And the one thing we were talking about is that there's not enough feeling of community. There's not enough theater community here. And there are several reasons why that's the case. Some of them are structural. But really, being in the theater is about being in the community.
And college is the place to do it all.
That's right, because who cares if you make a mistake? Really, you're not going to get fired. So now's the time to make those mistakes.
Okay, you are listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers. Light Talk is sponsored by...
From across the pond, it's the cheeky rigor of Sheffield. State fairs, rodeos, and outdoor summer gigs all have one thing in common: bugs. There was a time when bugs were just an annoyance buzzing about your head, but now, with touchscreen consoles, creepy crawlers and flying insects can sabotage your hard work. Have you ever been in the midst of a beautiful, blue, moody ballad on stage when all of a sudden a bug does a death bind to your monitor and now the strobe is going crazy? I have. Forget the candles, the sprays, and the pig. I have. Make a big, bold statement by declaring psychological warfare on the insect kingdom. I have. The cheeky rigor of Sheffield has developed 3 strategies to combat unwanted bug programming. Most FOH positions have at least 3 crew members. The cheeky rigor of Sheffield suggests a wardrobe change. Let's start with the sound engineer. Now he or she can proudly wear the red and white of the Orchid Man. Since time immemorial, the Orchid Man has been on that thin red line of protection against the bug horde. As a result, fear of the Orchid Man is now ingrained into bug DNA. Just one sight of the uniform will discourage most sensible bugs to stay away. But perhaps you're besieged with younger, more reckless bugs, bugs that think life is cheap, kamikaze bugs. What to do? Well, now that Q caller can earn his keep with a change of wardrobe too, the praying mantis latex suit. Only the most suicidal of the bug kingdom will play chicken with a giant praying mantis. You got to ask yourself one question, bug. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? Finally, the LD has his or her part to play in this dance of death. Face it, you're probably just running time code anyhow, so what else do you have to do? Dress up as a Venus flytrap. You'll look great. It's the summer touring season. Get ready. Someday the bugs will take over, but today is not that day. The cheeky rigor of Sheffield. We make underwear, too.
It's great to see the cheeky rigor back with a new bug repellent, because several years ago, Steve, didn't they come out with the pig? Didn't they have like a special pig?
Yeah, the mosquito pig.
Right.
What motivated this whole thing, if you remember, 10 or 12 months ago, someone wrote in and said, what do you do with bugs landing on your touchscreen monitor? They keep reprogramming my show.
And I remember I once I visited my friends who were doing a summer theater out in Jekyll Island. You guys ever hear Jekyll Island? I think it's in Georgia. Well, it's an outdoor theater in Georgia, and you would literally, there were so many mosquitoes, you'd literally see them pick up children out of the audience and fly away with them. They basically take the child away. So you got to be real careful with these bugs. Although DDT helps too. I've heard that there's a new product out that sort of like sprays DDT all around the tech table. And I'm living proof that DDT does not hurt you, as when I was a kid, we used to ride our bikes behind these fog trucks until one of us would pass out. And I'm still here.
There you go.
So there.
So you were bug-free.
I was totally bug-free, and I think I'm bug-free forever because that DDT is still in my blood.
Well, it's still in the ground around my mother's house. It's never gone away. That was the thing. She grieved back on Clinch Mountain when DDT was outlawed. She got the last, 100-pound bag of it, just spread
Good
it
for
around
her.
the house. Yeah, it's been a moat of death now for 40 years.
A moat of death. I love it.
And now, back to Light Talk.
The sound of those ducks tell us that it's time for that wonderful segment of Light Talk, Let's Talk About. And today, it's funny because, we were talking about how to make money in this business, and I jokingly talked about how education supplements some of our income. For those people who do both work in the profession and in academia, the question is how to navigate your professional work with academia.
And you've come to the right place because we are self-proclaimed internet experts.
We are internet experts and we're academic. You're right. We don't know what the hell we're doing. So anyway, what do you think, guys?
One of the nice things is that if you're in academia, if you're in a teaching position, they expect you to do research. And research in the fine arts field is actually designing plays and working in the profession. So that's to our advantage. They want us to do that. So they want to be able to make sure we have enough time to do that during your progress from assistant to full professor.
Except they don't like it when you go away to do it.
Well,
They expect you to do it in town and still make all your classes.
Well, some places don't take the local theaters account.
It all depends on where you're teaching.
Exactly.
And this is my big thing when I have young professionals who are looking to get into academia and still want to continue their work, is that you need to get in writing in your letter of agreement that you are going to be free to do outside work. Now, one thing that I've always agreed to, and this is not the case in all of the studies in academia, but it is the case with me, because I think it's only fair, is that if I'm doing a show and I need to be gone for a couple of weeks, and it's easier for lighting designers. God, I don't know how directors do this, because directors have to be gone for like 6-7 weeks. But for lighting designers, usually you're gone for about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks at the most. I am responsible for hiring substitute teachers. Now, I live in LA, and there are a lot of great teachers I could hire, and people who just love coming in for a couple of weeks or 3 weeks to do a project or a few, with my students. So it's easy for me. But if you're, and it's also easy, I assume, for Brackley and Steve as well. I don't think it's easy for Stan because he lives in Gainesville. So I think it'd be much more of a challenge to find professional designers who can offer the students another point of view. It's a win-win situation. But you need to get that in advance, and you need to make sure it's in your letter, because you never know the new dean who's coming in, and they may say, hey, we know you did this in the past, but you can't do it anymore. And if that's the case, then your career has just ended. So you have to decide at that point, do I want to stick with academia or do I want to work in the profession?
And make sure that it's also in writing that your creative work is equal to the research, like the scientists.
Right. Well, one thing that we always do is when we have a job search, we send the applicants, the ones who are in the final pool, we send them our department and school university RTP document. That stands for retention, tenure, and promotion. And in that document, that policy, it says exactly what counts toward research.
Exactly.
And what doesn't count. And Brackley's right. There are a lot of schools, and these are the good schools, if you ask me, unless they're in New York or LA or one of the major cities like Vegas or Dallas. They say local gigs will not count. Or your gig must be at least a LORT B theater or above, or it needs to be an international opera house. Our RTP document says very specifically for every area, whether you're an actor, researcher, dramaturg, designer, exactly what is considered for research.
And the other nice thing is you can also, usually you have 9-month contracts, so you're not working in the summer, and that's a perfect time to do any professional work.
A lot of summer gigs are taken by people like me who've worked at the same gig for the past 22 years. And you're never, I'm gonna go out there dying, man. I decided, I keep talking about retiring, but the directors always say, no, we're doing this new carousel next year, and I want you to do the set lighting. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do another year. But something, I love it, because the people out there I absolutely adore. Right. They're my family. But yeah, it is difficult in the summer, but it's really important that you have this in writing. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of pushback. And what the worst pushback is? People from your own department. Thank God I don't have this in my department now, but I've seen it in other departments where some professors who really have not worked professionally, either ever or in a long time, they start resenting you because you're out flying around the world doing shows, and they're saying, well, where's David? Where's John or whatever? Where's Marilyn? Well, she happens to be doing a show in London this week. And not only does it help her as far as her research, it also helps if she takes her students with her, which is what I do. So that's another thing I would suggest you do, although that's getting more and more difficult because of liability issues now. This is unfortunate, but I grew up when Gilbert and Neil were doing that.
One of the advantages of being at a university, going back to that collaboration idea, something I've come to believe, I have no documentation of this, is just me throwing out information that could be completely bogus. I think in the theater department, more or less, you're among a group of people who are all on the same side, and you're talking to your entire department on a daily basis, and you've all got skin in the game, and that skin in the game are those acting students and design students and technology students. I don't think that happens in the English department or the biology department.
Absolutely not.
Because you're working by yourself so much. You are the 17th century Italian specialist, and so you have no skin in the game with a person who's doing 20th century literature. Doesn't mean you don't talk, but you have an agenda that you have to accomplish every day, independent of all the other specialists inside your department.
Cool. Well, it sounds like the three of us are all working at schools that support professional theater. It's really horrible when you're not. So make sure you do your research. I'm going to tell you a real quick story. A very famous designer who is a friend of mine called me about a local school that was looking for a lighting professor. And this is a very prestigious school and a private university. And I said, I really don't know much about their lighting program, but this is what you have to ask for. Because he never, ever applied for an academic position before. And I told him basically the things I said before. Get it in writing, make sure they give you the opportunity, that they give you freedom to do this. And as long as you cover your classes, you're going to be okay. Now, there's a balance. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. So he did that, and he lasted 1 year because they went back on all those promises. And that really sucks because this guy is a really great designer. So he left the university. He was smart enough to leave. So I highly recommend that. Now, I was just going to say something very important, and that is that even though you're a working professional, there has to be a balance. You cannot be gone like 10 weeks out of the 16 weeks of the semester.
Like Gilbert was.
Well, but Gilbert took all his students with him.
Gilbert took his class with him.
He took all his students with him. He could not get away with what he did back in the 80s. Nowadays, you just can't because there are more liability issues. It's almost impossible now unless and this is what I do now, is I have the company hire the student. Right. I don't do the same way. I don't say I'm going to pay you as my assistant. Have the company deal with the housing. They deal with all that stuff. So Steve has our last question of the day.
Yes, this comes from Ronnie in New Mexico. And the question is, what is A.C.T? That's one of the great questions of theater, and no one's quite sure. It's the Associated Crafts and Technicians. So A.C.T is a card for people who want to join the IATSE but do not have a home local. Where you see A.C.T come into play is on the touring circuit. So you'll see a lot of touring people start their professional career with A.C.T memberships. They still pay dues to the international. They just don't have a specific local. So A.C.T is not a bad thing. It's a good way to get your career started if you're going to be on the road. And then, you move into a major market and you join the IATSE.
Do they have a health plan and all that?
I don't know. I was never an A.C.T member.
Yeah.
It started popping up, I think, I'm going to say 82, 84 is when I first think I remember hearing of it. Because the IA did want people on the road to have union cards.
Sure.
And so and unionize and get those dues and organize. So I'm not sure.
That's interesting. Sure. Yeah, because the one great thing about USA and IA, and now USA we all know is part of IA or IATSE, which stands for
International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees.
That's it. So they have a really, good health plan, and they also have a pension, which is funny because I'm going to start collecting on that pension in like 2 months. Oh my God.
And they got a damn good looking T-shirt too. I've always liked the IA bug.
Yes, they do have a good T-shirt. So USA is now it has been for about 20, 30 years now.
It was originally part of the IA, then it split off to the Painters Union.
To the Painters.
And then came back.
That made no sense, being part of the
IMPAT.
International Brotherhood of Painters and Allied Trades.
Exactly.
And paper hangers.
I think Guido just came down to the office one day and said, I got a deal you can't refuse.
Well, it's so interesting because I at one time was a USA business representative. I was the Southern business rep for United Scenic Artists, and I was like negotiating contracts with Disney and places like that, crazy stuff, right? And that was the time when they were part of IMPAT. And we would get this magazine every single month called Painters on Parade.
I got him. I
that
remember
was
those.
the name of it. Yeah, right? Yeah. And it was always like, so because what it used to be was with billboard painters, right? So they figured, hey, United Scenic Artist, that's someone who paints drops and things like that. So they should be part of the Painters Union. But it's still better to be with IA. To this day, it's better to be with IA.
Absolutely.
Yep. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, that Hammond organ solo in the background tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you choose to litigate, the law firm of Fleck, Flock, Flare, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Las Vegas, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to tune in next week when we discuss My Follow Spot is All Sticky. Oh, that's pretty gross. I just became the master electrician. What the hell do I do now? And can you walk me through the basic inventory? Oh, make sure you have it all on you.
All that and a new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Thanks, Brackley, for sitting in today, and bye-bye from Light Talk.
Thank you,
Toodles.
and bye-bye.
Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk. Light Talk. Light Talk. Lumen